The champagne glass shattered against marble before anyone heard the scream. Lena Cross hit the terrace railing with enough force to knock the breath from her lungs, Adrian Voss's hand still twisted in the fabric of her dress, his smile cold as winter steel. "You were always too small for this world," he whispered, loud enough for the executives circling like sharks to hear. "A mistake I'm finally correcting." But as gravity claimed her and the ocean roared 50 feet below, strong arms locked around her waist, pulling her back from the edge. The man who caught her wasn't supposed to be there, and the secrets he'd uncover would burn Adrian's empire to ash. If you're watching from New York, Mumbai, Lagos, or anywhere in between, drop your city in the comments and hit that like button. Let's see how far this story travels. Because what happened next changed everything. The Meridian Heights Resort clung to the California coastline like a crown jewel, all glass and steel and old money arrogance. Lena Cross stood at the edge of the executive retreat's main hall, one hand gripping her tablet like a lifeline, the other smoothing down the same navy dress she'd worn to every company function for the past 3 years. She'd learned early that invisibility was safer than attention. Poor thing still doesn't know how to dress for success. The voice carried across the polished marble. Miranda Chen, VP of Marketing, her red lips curved in practiced sympathy. 3 years at Voss Industries and she still looks like she wandered in from a college library. Lena's fingers tightened on the tablet. She didn't turn around. She'd stopped turning around 2 years ago. "Give her credit," another voice chimed in. "She did manage to land Adrian Voss for almost a year. That takes some kind of talent." Landing him and keeping him are very different things. Miranda's laugh was sharp as broken glass. He upgraded significantly when he chose someone who actually belongs in his world. The words hit exactly where they were meant to. Lena forced herself to breathe, to focus on the data scrolling across her screen, the presentation she'd spent 6 months building, the algorithms that would revolutionize the company's security infrastructure, the work that would finally prove she was more than the quiet girl from a broken home who somehow ended up in rooms she didn't deserve. "Ms. Cross." She looked up. James Morrison, head of security, stood before her, his expression professionally neutral. But his eyes, dark, assessing, held something that made her spine straighten instinctively. "The morning session is starting. You're presenting first." "I thought—" Lena's throat tightened. "Adrian said I was scheduled for the afternoon panel." "Plans changed." Morrison's jaw shifted slightly. "Mr. Voss requested you open. He said something about setting the right tone for the weekend." "The right tone?" Lena's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what that meant. The presentation hall was smaller than she'd expected, arranged in concentric half-circles that forced the speaker into a fishbowl of judgment. Every seat was filled, senior executives, department heads, board members whose names appeared in financial magazines. At the back, standing against the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Pacific Ocean, was Adrian Voss. He looked exactly as he had the day they'd met at a company mixer 3 years ago. Tall, blonde, effortlessly elegant in a suit that cost more than her monthly rent. The same smile that had made her feel chosen. The same blue eyes that had later made her feel worthless. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian's voice carried without effort, that boardroom confidence she'd once mistaken for strength. "Thank you for joining us this weekend. Before we begin, I thought it important to acknowledge where we've come from, to recognize the foundation, however humble, upon which we've built our success." Lena's hands went cold. "Our first presenter is Lena Cross, a data architect who's been with us since the beginning. Lena came to us straight from community college, eager to learn, willing to do whatever it took to be part of something bigger than herself." His smile widened. "I think we can all appreciate that kind of dedication." The room remained silent, but Lena could feel the weight of their attention, the subtle shift in how they looked at her, not as a colleague, but as a curiosity, a charity case. She stepped to the podium, her presentation remote, slick with sweat. "Good morning." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm here to present a comprehensive security infrastructure redesign that addresses the vulnerabilities in our current system. Over the past 6 months, I've identified 17 critical breach points that—" 17? Adrian's interruption was gentle, almost paternal. "That seems like a significant number, Lena. Are you certain you didn't, perhaps, misunderstand some of the data?" Heat crawled up her neck. I've triple-checked every finding. The vulnerabilities are documented in the report distributed to the board last week. The report. Adrian exchanged glances with several executives in the front row. Yes, I remember. Quite ambitious for someone with your background. Though I have to ask, did you have help preparing it? The implication hung in the air like poison gas. I prepared it myself. Lena's fingers found the remote button, advancing to her first slide. The current system relies on perimeter defense, which is fundamentally flawed in a hybrid work environment. What I'm proposing is a zero-trust architecture that— Zero trust? Adrian's laugh was soft, indulgent. That's quite a buzzword, isn't it? Did you read that in a tech blog, Lena? Because implementing something like that would require expertise that, forgive me for saying, might be beyond your current skill set. Someone in the third row coughed. It sounded like suppressed laughter. Lena's vision narrowed to the man she'd once loved, once trusted with every vulnerable piece of herself. The man who knew exactly how to dismantle her in front of everyone who mattered. I have the expertise. Her voice shook now, betraying her. I've been designing security systems since I was 16. I taught myself to code because my father's restaurant couldn't afford proper cyber protection after they were hacked. I built our current infrastructure from the ground up. Even if my name isn't on the— Your father's restaurant. Adrian's tone shifted, sharpening. Lena, we've discussed this. Your personal history, while touching, isn't really relevant to professional discourse. This is a corporate retreat, not a therapy session. The room went silent, absolutely, devastatingly silent. Lena felt something crack inside her chest, not her heart, that had broken months ago when she'd found Adrian in his office with Vanessa Klein, his new fiancée, both of them laughing over printed copies of texts Lena had sent him. Private texts. Vulnerable texts. Messages she'd written at 3 in the morning when panic attacks made sleep impossible, when the weight of pretending to belong somewhere she didn't became unbearable. What broke now was smaller but somehow more vital, the last fragile belief that she could prove her worth through work alone. I apologize. The words scraped her throat. You're right. I'll focus on the technical specifications. She made it through 12 more slides before Adrian interrupted again, this time to question her methodology with just enough technical language to sound credible to people who didn't understand the actual systems. Then again to suggest she'd misread a dataset. Then once more to point out that her recommendations would be costly and disruptive. Code words every executive understood meant not worth the investment. By the time she finished, Lena knew her presentation had failed. Not because the work was bad. It was brilliant. She knew it was brilliant. But because Adrian had poisoned it before she'd even begun. Thank you, Lena. Adrian's applause was generous, encouraging others to join. That was educational. We appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective, even if it's clear we need more experienced voices to evaluate these proposals properly. More experienced voices. Translation: people who belonged in this room. People who weren't her. Lena gathered her materials with numb fingers, avoiding eye contact as she navigated back to her seat. She didn't see the man standing against the back wall studying her with sharp, analytical attention. Didn't notice how his jaw tightened as Adrian's smile turned triumphant. James Morrison had seen that smile before, on men who hurt animals for fun, on officers who abused power because they could, on every bully he'd ever encountered who mistook cruelty for strength. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Other presenters, all men, all confident, all treating the room like it owed them attention, delivered their proposals to nods and thoughtful questions. No one interrupted. No one questioned their expertise. No one suggested they'd had help. By lunch, Lena's hands had stopped shaking, replaced by a hollow numbness that felt almost like peace. She filled a plate she wouldn't eat, found a table in the corner furthest from the main crowd, and opened her tablet to review the evening's networking event schedule. She didn't have to go. Nobody would miss her. But hiding felt like surrender, and she'd promised herself 3 years ago that she wouldn't be the kind of woman who hid, even when hiding would hurt less. That was a hell of a presentation. Lena looked up. James Morrison stood beside her table, holding a coffee cup, his expression unreadable. Up close, he was taller than she'd realized, broad-shouldered in a way that suggested physical competence rather than gym vanity. His face was weathered, attractive in a careful way, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, a mouth that looked like it didn't smile often. "You don't have to be kind." Lena's voice came out flat. "I know how it went. I'm not being kind." Morrison pulled out the chair across from her without asking permission. "I'm being accurate. Your analysis of the perimeter vulnerabilities was flawless. The Zero Trust proposal addressed every major security gap we've been ignoring for 2 years. And the implementation timeline you outlined was actually achievable, which is more than I can say for most of the ego-driven garbage I've heard this morning." Lena stared at him. "Then why didn't you say something when Adrian was—" "Because I'm new." Morrison's mouth quirked without humor. "Hired 3 weeks ago specifically to assess security infrastructure, which means I have exactly 0 political capital and a target on my back the size of Texas." He leaned forward slightly. "But it also means I don't owe Adrian Voss a damn thing. And I know sabotage when I see it." Something in Lena's chest loosened fractionally. "He's very good at it. He's very practiced at it." Morrison's correction was deliberate. "There's a difference. Good implies skill. What he did to you in there was just abuse dressed up in corporate language." The word hung between them. Abuse. Nobody had named it that before. Lena had called it criticism, professional feedback, her own inadequacy. But abuse? That was something different. That was something she could finally be angry about. "I was engaged to him for 11 months. The confession surprised her. He proposed at the company gala, in front of everyone. Made this speech about how I inspired him, how I saw the world differently, how that made him better. She laughed without humor. 3 months later, I found him with Vanessa. He said I was too damaged for the life he deserved. Said my background would always hold him back." Morrison's expression didn't change, but something hardened behind his eyes. "When did you break it off?" "I didn't. He did. Sent an email." Lena's fingers traced the edge of her tablet. "Very professional. Outlined all the reasons why we were incompatible. CC'd his lawyer to discuss returning the ring." Jesus Christ. The ring was his grandmother's. He needed it back for Vanessa. Lena met Morrison's gaze directly. "I FedExed it to his office the same day. Insured for full value. Signature required." For the first time, Morrison smiled. Small, quick, but genuine. "Good for you." "Didn't feel good. Felt like losing." Lena closed her tablet. "Everything with Adrian feels like losing." Morrison studied her for a long moment. "Can I tell you something? About losing?" "Sure." "I spent 12 years in the Marines, specialized in counterintelligence, threat assessment, protective services. I was good at my job, really good. Good enough that I got recruited by a private military contractor that paid triple my military salary." He paused, his jaw working. "I took the job because I had a kid at home and an ex-wife who deserved better child support than what I could afford on military pay. Told myself I was being responsible, providing for my family." Lena waited. She could sense this was going somewhere important. "The contractor sent me to extract a corporate executive from a hostile region. Should have been straightforward, get in, get the VIP, get out. Except the executive had been cooking the books, stealing from local communities, and the people holding him weren't terrorists. They were victims trying to get justice." Morrison's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "I followed orders, got him out. He went home to his mansion. The people he'd stolen from went to prison." "That's not losing," Lena said quietly. "That's being used." "It's both." Morrison's eyes were dark. "I lost myself in that mission. Took me 2 years and a lot of therapy to get back. But I learned something important. The people who make you feel like you're losing are usually the ones stealing from you. They just call it something else. Leadership, love, opportunity." The words settled into Lena's bones like truth she'd been avoiding. "Adrian's been stealing from me." She said it aloud for the first time. "My work, my ideas, my dignity." "Yeah." Morrison's voice was gentle. "He has. And I let him." "No." Morrison leaned back, his expression fierce. "You trusted him. That's different. He exploited that trust. That's on him, not you." Lena wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe she wasn't complicit in her own diminishment, but 3 years of Adrian's voice in her head made it hard to separate truth from gaslight. "What's your name?" Morrison asked suddenly. "Your real name, not the one on the company directory." "Lena Elizabeth Cross." She frowned slightly. "Why?" Because I've been calling you Miss Cross in my head, and if we're going to work together, I should probably use your actual name. Morrison extended his hand across the table. I'm Ethan Cole, and I think you and I need to have a longer conversation about what's actually going on at Voss Industries. Lena took his hand. His grip was warm, solid, the kind of steady that felt like safety. What do you mean? What's actually going on? Ethan glanced around the dining area, checking sight lines with practiced efficiency. Not here. Tonight, after the networking event. There's a maintenance access corridor on the east wing that nobody uses. Meet me there at 10. Why the secrecy? Because 3 days ago I found evidence that someone's been accessing personnel files they shouldn't have clearance for. Medical records, financial information, private correspondence. Ethan's voice dropped. And this morning, during your presentation, I watched Adrian Voss reference details about your father's restaurant that weren't in any company bio. Details that would only be available if someone had read your intake medical forms from Employee Health Services. Ice flooded Lena's veins. My medical forms are confidential. They should be. Ethan's eyes were hard. But I don't think confidential means much to Adrian Voss, and I don't think you're the only person he's been stealing from. The afternoon sessions passed like a fever dream. Lena sat through presentations on market expansion and brand evolution and corporate synergy, hearing none of it. Her mind spun through 3 years of moments she'd dismissed as paranoia. Adrian asking questions that felt too specific, knowing things about her therapy sessions she'd never mentioned, making casual references to her estranged mother that Lena had only documented in her private medical history. She'd thought he was attentive, caring, invested in understanding her. But what if he'd just been stealing? Mining her most vulnerable moments for ammunition. The networking event began at 7, transforming the resort's terrace into a carefully curated display of corporate power. String lights hung between pillars like captured stars. A jazz quartet played music nobody listened to. Waiters circulated with champagne and canapes that cost more than Lena's weekly grocery budget. She stood at the edge of the terrace, nursing a sparkling water, watching Adrian work the crowd with Vanessa on his arm. Vanessa wore white, deliberate, Lena knew, a preview of the wedding planned for next month. Adrian had announced their engagement 6 weeks after ending things with Lena. The invitations had gone to every employee. Lena's had arrived with a handwritten note. Hope there are no hard feelings. You understand this is what's best for everyone. Still hovering in the shadows, I see. Lena turned. Miranda Chen stood beside her, champagne in hand, smile sharp as a blade. You really should try mingling, Lena. Networking is how careers are built, though I suppose that ship has sailed for you. Has it? Lena kept her voice neutral. Oh, honey. Miranda's laugh was practiced sympathy. After this morning's disaster, Adrian's already telling people you might be happier in a less demanding role. Maybe data entry? Something with clear parameters where you can't do too much damage. The cruelty was casual, reflexive. Miranda wasn't even trying to hide it. Did Adrian tell you to say that? Lena asked. Or did you come up with it yourself? Miranda's smile froze. Excuse me? I'm just wondering if you're actually this mean, or if you're performing for someone. Lena met her gaze steadily. Because, from where I'm standing, it looks like you spend a lot of energy tearing down other women to impress men who barely know your name. Color flooded Miranda's cheeks. You have no idea. I have every idea. Lena's voice stayed soft, but something had shifted inside her, some internal switch flipped by Ethan's words about being stolen from. I've spent 3 years watching women like you compete for Adrian's approval by destroying women like me. It's boring, and it's sad, and I'm done pretending it's normal. She walked away before Miranda could respond, her heart hammering against her ribs. Small rebellion, tiny defiance. But it felt like reclaiming inches of territory she'd surrendered without realizing. Lena, Adrian's voice stopped her mid-stride. She turned slowly. He stood backlit by the terrace lights, Vanessa beside him like a trophy, both of them perfectly composed. Beautiful. Powerful. Everything Lena would never be. I wanted to check on you. Adrian's concern was flawless, pitched to carry to nearby executives. This morning seemed difficult. I hope you know I only pushed because I care about your professional development. Professional development. as if humiliation was mentorship. I appreciate your concern, Lena forced her voice steady. But I'm fine. Are you? Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice to intimate. Because Vanessa and I were discussing your presentation, and we're worried you might be under too much stress. The quality of your work has been declining, and some of your recent behavior has been concerning. Lena's pulse spiked. What behavior? Missing meetings, emotional outbursts. That email you sent to the board last month about feeling unsupported, Adrian's expression was pure manufactured empathy. We want to help, Lena, but you have to be willing to acknowledge when you're struggling. The lie was so smooth, so perfectly constructed, that for a moment Lena doubted her own memory. Had she sent an email to the board? Had she missed meetings? No, she hadn't. But Adrian was planting seeds, creating a narrative of instability that would make anything she said later seem like paranoid delusion. I haven't sent any emails to the board. Lena's voice came out harder than intended. And I've missed exactly one meeting in 3 years, when I had the flu. Lena. Vanessa's voice was gentle, condescending. We're not attacking you, we're trying to support you, but you have to meet us halfway. Meet them halfway. Accept their version of reality. Admit she was the problem. I need some air. Lena turned away, aiming for the terrace stairs that led down to the beach path. Running away again. Adrian's voice followed her, just loud enough for people to hear. That's becoming a pattern with you, isn't it? Lena's vision blurred. She kept walking, faster now, needing distance from Adrian's poison and Vanessa's pity and the eyes of every executive who'd witnessed her systematic destruction. The terrace stairs were steep, winding down the cliff face toward the beach. String lights marked the path, but her eyes were swimming with unshed tears, her chest tight with rage she couldn't express. She didn't see Adrian following until his hand closed around her wrist. We're not done talking. His voice was different now, cold, stripped of performance. You embarrassed me this morning with that amateur presentation, made me look bad for vouching for you. You didn't vouch for me. Lena tried to pull away. His grip tightened. You sabotaged me. I gave you reality. Adrian's face was inches from hers, his beautiful features twisted into something ugly. You're not special, Lena. You're not brilliant. You're a community college dropout who got lucky, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. Let go of me. You should be grateful. Adrian's other hand moved to her shoulder, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. I made you visible. Without me, you'd still be nobody. And now you're throwing it in my face by trying to play victim? I said let go. Lena's voice rose. Adrian's smile was cruel. Make me. He shoved her backward. Lena's heel caught on the stair edge. Time slowed. The terrace lights spinning, the ocean roaring far below, Adrian's face expressionless as she fell toward the railing. Her back hit the iron barrier hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. For one terrible moment, the metal gave way, tilting out over empty air. She was going to fall. 50 feet down to rocks and foam. She was going to die, and Adrian was just watching. Then arms locked around her waist, yanking her back from the edge with enough force to send them both stumbling into the cliff wall. Lena gasped for air, her vision spotting, terror and adrenaline making her shake. I've got you. Ethan's voice, low and steady in her ear. You're safe. I've got you. Lena collapsed against him, her legs useless. Ethan held her upright, one arm around her waist, the other braced against the wall. His heart thundered against her back, the only thing louder than her own panic. Adrian Voss. Ethan's voice was deadly calm. Step away from her, now. Lena turned her head. Adrian stood 3 stairs above them, his expression shifting from cold rage to practiced concern so quickly it was almost impressive. Morrison, thank goodness you were here. Adrian's hand spread in relief. Lena stumbled. I tried to catch her but couldn't reach in time. Is she all right? She didn't stumble. Ethan's arm tightened protectively around Lena. You pushed her. What? Adrian's shock was perfect. That's absurd. Why would I push her? We were just talking and she lost her balance. The stairs are poorly lit. It's an accident waiting to happen. I watched you do it. Ethan's voice never rose, but it cut like a blade. Watched you grab her wrist, shove her backward, and stand there while she nearly went over the railing. So you can drop the concerned executive act because I'm not buying it. Adrian's mask slipped, just for a second, but Lena saw it. Raw fury, genuine hatred. Then it was gone, replaced by wounded dignity. I don't know what you think you saw, but you're mistaken. I would never hurt Lena. We have history, complicated history, yes, but I care about her well-being. Your caring almost killed her. Ethan shifted, putting himself between Lena and Adrian. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk back up those stairs. You're going to tell everyone Lena went to her room because she wasn't feeling well, and you're going to stay the hell away from her for the rest of this retreat. You can't order me around. Adrian's voice hardened. I'm a senior executive. You're security staff. Know your place. My place, Ethan said quietly, is between dangerous people and their victims. And you just became dangerous. They stared at each other, Adrian radiating entitled fury, Ethan absolutely immovable. Finally, Adrian laughed, the sound forced and bitter. This isn't over. He looked past Ethan to Lena. You're making a mistake, Lena, a serious mistake. And when this all falls apart, remember, I tried to help you. He walked back up the stairs, his footsteps deliberate, controlled. A man who knew he was untouchable. Lena's legs finally gave out completely. Ethan caught her before she hit the ground, lowering them both to sit on the stairs. She couldn't stop shaking, couldn't catch her breath, couldn't process what had just happened. He was going to let me fall. The words came out broken. He pushed me and just watched. I know. Ethan's voice was gentle now, his arms still around her shoulders. I saw. Nobody will believe you. Lena turned to look at him, this stranger who'd saved her life twice in one day. He'll say I'm unstable, that I imagined it, that you're mistaken or lying to protect me. Probably. Ethan's jaw was tight. But I also have the resort security footage showing him following you down here, showing him grab you, showing you go over the railing. Hope fluttered weakly in Lena's chest. There are cameras? On every terrace and stairwell. It's a liability issue. Resort doesn't want lawsuits from drunk executives taking headers off the cliff. Ethan's expression was grim, which means I have proof, real undeniable proof that Adrian Voss just committed assault. Lena closed her eyes. He'll make it disappear. He has connections, lawyers, board members, people who owe him favors. He can try. Ethan's voice was steel. But he's going to discover something about me pretty quickly. I don't disappear easy, and I'm really good at protecting people from men like him. Lena wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe this quiet, competent stranger could stand between her and Adrian's systematic destruction. But 3 years had taught her that believing in rescue was just another way to get hurt. Why are you helping me? The question came out raw. You don't know me. This isn't your fight. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I have a daughter. She's 7. Smart as hell, creative, funny, everything good in the world. His voice softened. Her mother and I split when she was 2. I was deployed too much, emotionally unavailable, all the classic military spouse complaints. But we worked out a custody agreement that lets me be present in her life. What does that have to do with me? Everything. Ethan met her gaze. Because I'm raising a little girl who's going to grow up and enter workplaces like this one. And I need to believe that when she does, there will be people willing to stand up when powerful men try to destroy her. People who see abuse and name it. People who don't look away. His words cracked something open in Lena's chest, some locked room where she'd been storing all her rage and grief and terror. I can't fight him. The admission felt like failure. I don't have the resources or the connections or the... You have me. Ethan's interruption was firm. And you have the truth. And you have evidence. That's a start. It's not enough. Maybe not. Ethan stood, offering his hand to help her up. But it's more than you had this morning. And tomorrow we'll have more. And the day after that, even more. We build the case piece by piece until it's undeniable. Lena took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. Her dress was torn where she'd hit the railing. Her shoulder throbbed. She probably had bruises forming under the fabric, but she was alive. And for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't alone. The maintenance corridor, Ethan said quietly. 10 o'clock. We need to talk about what I've found in the personnel files. Because Adrian pushing you wasn't random violence. It was strategic, and I think I know why. Lena nodded, her throat too tight for words. They climbed back up to the terrace separately, Ethan first, checking to make sure Adrian wasn't waiting. Then Lena, moving through the crowd like a ghost. Invisible again, but for different reasons now. She caught Miranda's speculative look, saw Vanessa whispering to a cluster of executives, felt the weight of judgment and pity and dismissal. But underneath it all, something new was growing. Something that felt dangerous and powerful and entirely her own. Adrian Voss had spent 3 years stealing from her. Her work, her dignity, her sense of self. It was time to start stealing it back. Lena spent the next 2 hours in her room, sitting on the edge of the bed with ice wrapped in a hotel towel pressed against her shoulder. The bruises were already forming, dark fingerprints where Adrian had grabbed her, a spreading purple shadow across her back where she'd hit the railing. Evidence written on her skin in pain she couldn't ignore. Her phone buzzed constantly. Texts from Miranda asking if she was okay, dripping with false concern. An email from HR requesting she fill out an incident report about her fall. A voice message from Vanessa suggesting they have coffee tomorrow to clear the air and move forward positively. Nothing from Adrian. He knew better than to leave a digital trail. At 9:45, Lena changed into jeans and a dark sweater, covering the bruises. She waited until the hallway was empty, then slipped out of her room and headed toward the east wing. The resort's luxury faded the further she walked. Polished marble giving way to industrial tile. Ambient lighting replaced by harsh fluorescence. A sign marked staff only hung beside a door that opened onto a narrow maintenance corridor. Ethan was already there, leaning against the concrete wall, still in his suit, but with the tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. He straightened when he saw her. "How's the shoulder?" His eyes went immediately to where she was favoring her left side. "Hurts." Lena didn't see the point in lying. "But I've had worse." Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Recognition, maybe, of the kind of person who measured pain by comparison. "From Adrian?" "From life." Lena crossed her arms, defensive. Adrian mostly specialized in damage that doesn't leave marks. "Until tonight." "Until tonight," she agreed. The corridor was cold, utilitarian, smelling of cleaning chemicals and recycled air. Nothing like the resort's carefully maintained elegance. "What did you find?" "In the personnel files?" Ethan pulled out his phone, swiping through screens. "I've been conducting a routine security audit since I was hired. Standard procedure for new heads of security. Check access logs, review clearance protocols, make sure nobody's getting into systems they shouldn't." He turned the phone toward her. 3 weeks ago, I noticed anomalies. Someone with executive-level credentials accessing employee medical records, financial documents, even therapy session notes from the company's mental health program. Lena's stomach dropped. That's illegal. Extremely. HIPAA violations, breach of confidentiality, potential grounds for a dozen lawsuits. Ethan scrolled through a spreadsheet dense with timestamps and file names. At first I thought it might be HR doing legitimate background checks. But the pattern was wrong. Same files accessed multiple times, information downloaded rather than just viewed, and the timing corresponded with personnel decisions that seemed targeted. Targeted how? Employees who filed complaints suddenly found themselves under performance review. People who pushed back against policy changes discovered their medical histories leaked to colleagues. A woman in accounting who reported sexual harassment had her therapy notes about childhood trauma somehow end up in her supervisor's hands. Ethan's jaw tightened. Classic intimidation tactics. Find someone's vulnerability, expose it, make them too afraid to fight back. Lena felt ice spreading through her veins. "And you think Adrian's behind it?" "I know he is." Ethan swiped to another screen, access logs highlighted in yellow. The credentials being used belonged to him. I cross-referenced the timestamps with his calendar. Every single unauthorized access happened when he was alone in his office, usually late at night or early morning. He's been doing this for how long? At least 2 years, maybe longer. The logs only go back that far before they're archived off-site. Ethan's voice was grim. But here's what made me specifically concerned about you. In the last 6 months, Adrian's accessed your files 47 times. Medical records, therapy notes, even your initial employment application where you disclosed your father's financial troubles. 47 times. Lena's vision blurred. Why? What could he possibly need from my files that many times? He's building a profile. Ethan put his phone away, his full attention on her now. Mapping your weaknesses, cataloging your vulnerabilities, constructing a narrative he can use to discredit you if needed. This morning's presentation wasn't random cruelty, Lena. It was calculated. He knew exactly which insecurities to trigger because he'd read about them in your therapy notes. The corridor seemed to tilt. Lena pressed her hand against the wall, steadying herself. My therapy notes are supposed to be confidential. The company mental health program promised. I know what they promised. Ethan's voice was gentle. And they probably believed it. But promises don't mean much when someone has executive access and no ethics. Lena thought about every session she'd had with Dr. Reeves, the company psychologist, talking about her father's restaurant failing after the cyber attack, her mother leaving when she was 12, the panic attacks that started in college when she realized she'd never belong in rooms full of people who'd had every advantage she'd been denied, the crippling imposter syndrome that made her double-check every line of code, every analysis, every email. Adrian had read all of it, had mined her pain for ammunition. He used it against me. The realization came out flat. Every fight we had, every time he made me feel like I was overreacting or being too sensitive, he knew exactly how to hurt me because he'd read the instruction manual. Yes, Ethan didn't try to soften it. And he's still doing it. That conversation on the terrace tonight, when he accused you of sending emotional emails to the board and missing meetings. He's creating a paper trail of instability. If you try to report what he's doing, he'll point to your documented mental health struggles and suggest you're having a breakdown. Lena's hands clenched into fists. So I'm trapped. If I stay silent, he keeps stealing from me and destroying my career. If I speak up, he uses my own therapy notes to paint me as unstable. You were trapped. Ethan's correction was deliberate. Past tense, because now you have me, and I have evidence that what he's doing is criminal. Evidence you obtained while conducting your own security audit. Lena met his eyes. Which means you were also accessing files without specific authorization. A good lawyer could argue you're just as guilty as Adrian. Ethan's mouth quirked slightly. You're not wrong, which is why I spent the last 3 weeks making absolutely certain every step of my audit was documented, approved, and legally airtight. I have written authorization from the CEO to review all security protocols and access logs. I have emails confirming my mandate to investigate any potential breaches. And I have a forensic record showing I didn't download or distribute a single piece of confidential information. I only documented that it had been improperly accessed. You planned for this. Lena felt something like hope stirring. You knew you'd need to prove your audit was legitimate. I spent 12 years in military intelligence. You learn pretty quickly that the difference between a hero and a criminal is documentation. Ethan leaned against the wall, his expression serious. But here's the thing, Lena. I can prove Adrian accessed files he shouldn't have. I can prove he violated company policy and federal law. What I can't prove, yet, is what he did with that information. That's where you come in. What do you mean? You said he's been stealing your work, your innovations, positioning himself as the architect of the company's success. Ethan pulled out a small notebook, flipping it open. I need you to tell me specifically what he's taken. Every project, every algorithm, every idea that had your fingerprints on it, but his name attached. Lena's throat tightened. That's 3 years of work. I don't even know where to start. Start with the biggest theft, the one that hurt most. She didn't have to think about it. The predictive security algorithm, the one that made Voss Industries the industry leader in threat assessment. The algorithm Adrian presented at the tech conference last year, the one that landed him on magazine covers and got him promoted to VP? I built it. Lena's voice shook with suppressed rage. Spent 18 months developing the framework, testing variables, refining the predictive models. I presented the initial concept to Adrian when we were still together, asked for his feedback before I took it to the board. He said it was too ambitious, that I should keep working on it privately until it was more polished. Let me guess. Ethan's voice was hard. You kept working on it, refined it, perfected it, and then he broke up with me via email. Lena laughed bitterly. 2 weeks later, he presented my algorithm to the board as his own innovation. Changed just enough of the terminology to make it sound original, but the core architecture was identical. I sat in that meeting and watched him take credit for something I'd created from nothing. Did you say anything? I tried. The memory still burned. I raised my hand, pointed out that the framework matched the project I'd been developing. Adrian smiled at me, this patient, condescending smile, and said it was sweet that I thought my preliminary work had contributed, but he'd been developing predictive security models since grad school. Everyone laughed, like I was a child claiming I'd invented the airplane. Ethan wrote quickly in his notebook. Do you have proof? Documentation showing you developed it first? I have everything. Lena felt heat rising in her chest. Code repositories with timestamps, email threads where I discussed the project with external consultants, even handwritten notes from my initial brainstorming sessions. I kept all of it because... She stopped, the truth lodging in her throat. Because part of you knew he'd steal it. Because part of me knew I'd need to prove I was good enough. The admission cost her something. I've spent my whole life in rooms where people assumed I didn't belong. The girl from the broken home, the community college dropout, the charity case who got lucky. I keep evidence of everything I create because otherwise people like Adrian can just erase me. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, something fierce and protective burning in his dark eyes. He's not going to erase you, Lena. We're going to make sure the whole world knows exactly who built that algorithm. But I need more. What else did he take? Over the next hour, Lena walked Ethan through a catalog of theft that made her sick to articulate. The client retention strategy Adrian had presented as his innovation, her concept, refined over months of data analysis, the restructured security protocols he'd implemented to great acclaim, her recommendations from a report she'd submitted that had mysteriously disappeared from company servers, even small things, ideas she'd mentioned casually in meetings that later appeared in Adrian's presentations with no attribution. He's a parasite. Ethan's voice was cold with controlled fury. He identifies talented people, extracts their ideas, then discards them when they're used up. You're not the first person he's done this to. Lena's head snapped up. What? I've been digging into his employment history. Before Voss Industries, Adrian worked at 3 other tech companies. At each one, he rose quickly through the ranks by championing innovative projects. And at each one, talented junior employees mysteriously left within a year of working closely with him. Ethan flipped through his notebook. At Meridian Tech, a young developer named Sarah Chen quit 6 months after Adrian was promoted using her cloud architecture design. At Fortress Systems, a security analyst named Marcus Reed was fired for performance issues right after Adrian presented his threat assessment framework to the board. The pattern is consistent. He finds people with talent, mines their expertise, then eliminates them before they can expose him. How is he still employed? Lena's voice cracked. How has nobody caught this before? Because he's careful. He targets people who are already vulnerable. Minorities, women, anyone without institutional power or connections. People who can be easily discredited if they push back. Ethan's jaw was tight. And he's positioned himself as indispensable. The golden boy who delivers results. Companies don't look too closely at how he gets those results because he makes them money. Until now. Until now, Ethan agreed. Because he pushed you off a terrace in front of security cameras. That's assault. That's a line even corporate lawyers can't explain away. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. He'll say I'm lying, that the footage doesn't show what you think it shows, that I lost my balance and you're misinterpreting what happened. Let him try. Ethan's smile was sharp. I've already secured the footage and sent copies to 3 separate encrypted servers. He can't delete it. And I have witness testimony from myself documenting exactly what I saw. Your testimony against his word. You've been here 3 weeks. He's been here 3 years and has the CEO's ear. He has the CEO's ear because the CEO thinks Adrian's a genius innovator. What happens when we prove Adrian's been stealing innovation from subordinates for years? Ethan leaned forward, his voice intense. What happens when we show that the algorithm that made Voss Industries an industry leader wasn't Adrian's creation? It was yours, that the company's success is built on stolen intellectual property. The CEO won't believe it. Adrian's made himself irreplaceable. Nobody's irreplaceable. Ethan's voice was firm, especially when they're a legal liability. And Adrian just became a massive legal liability. HIPAA violations, corporate espionage, assault. That's enough to destroy any executive's career, no matter how valuable they think they are. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that evidence and truth mattered more than power and connections. But 3 years had taught her that the world didn't work that way. "What's your plan?" she asked quietly. "Assuming we can prove everything you're saying, that Adrian stole my work, violated privacy laws, assaulted me, what happens next?" Ethan closed his notebook, meeting her gaze directly. "We build an airtight case. Document every theft, every violation, every instance of abuse. We get statements from other victims, Sarah Chen, Marcus Reed, anyone else Adrian's destroyed. We compile evidence that's so overwhelming, so undeniable, that the board has no choice but to act. And then? And then we bring it to the CEO with a simple message. Fire Adrian Voss and face a single internal scandal, or protect him and face dozens of lawsuits from every employee whose privacy he violated, every person whose work he stole, and every shareholder who deserves to know the company's success was built on fraud." That could take months. Lena's voice was hollow. Meanwhile, Adrian's still here, still powerful, still able to hurt me. "Which is why you're not going back to your regular job on Monday." Ethan's tone shifted, becoming protective. "I'm putting you on temporary assignment to my security team, reporting directly to me. It's within my authority as head of security to requisition personnel for special projects. You'll have a legitimate reason to be working separately from Adrian's division, which gives you physical distance and a paper trail showing you're under my supervision. He'll know what we're doing. Let him know." Ethan's smile was cold. "Let him worry. Let him wonder exactly how much evidence we have and how close we are to exposing him. Scared people make mistakes, and I'm counting on Adrian making a big one." Lena studied the man in front of her, this stranger who'd appeared in her life at exactly the moment she needed someone to see her. "Why are you doing this? Really? It can't just be about your daughter and workplace justice." Ethan was quiet for a moment, his expression turning inward. "When I left the military, I told myself I was done protecting people who didn't deserve it. Done following orders that benefited the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. I took this job because I wanted to use my skills for something clean, corporate security, threat assessment, nothing morally complicated. And then I watched Adrian Voss push you off a terrace and stand there while you nearly died. Watched him perform concern while trying to gaslight everyone about what happened. And I realized there's no such thing as morally uncomplicated work. Power corrupts everywhere. Boardrooms, battlefields, everywhere. The only choice is whether you stand with the people being crushed by it or look away. You could lose your job." Lena's voice was soft. "Going after a senior executive 3 weeks into your employment, that's career suicide." "Maybe," Ethan shrugged, "but I've been through worse. And I can sleep at night knowing I didn't let a predator keep destroying people just because stopping him was inconvenient." Something cracked in Lena's chest, some wall she'd built to protect herself from hope. "I don't know how to do this. How to fight someone like Adrian." "You don't have to know." Ethan's voice was steady. "You just have to be willing to try. I'll handle the strategy, the documentation, the legal framework. All I need from you is the truth about what he's stolen and the courage to stand behind it when the time comes. And if I'm not brave enough?" The question came out small, frightened. "If I can't face him and the board and everyone who thinks I'm nothing, then we find another way." Ethan's expression was fierce. "But for what it's worth, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. You survived 3 years of systematic psychological abuse. You built innovations that changed an industry while being told you were inadequate. You stood on that terrace tonight and told him to let go even though you were terrified. That's not cowardice, Lena. That's survival. And survival is just the beginning." Lena felt tears pressing at her eyes but refused to let them fall. "What happens now? Tonight?" "Tonight. You go back to your room, lock the door, and get some rest. Tomorrow morning, you're going to file a formal incident report about what happened on the terrace. Factual, detailed, documented. I'll file a separate security report with the footage attached. We start creating an official record that can't be erased or explained away. Adrian will retaliate. I'm counting on it. Ethan's smile was grim. Every move he makes against you from this point forward is more evidence of a pattern, more proof that he's targeting you specifically. The angrier he gets, the sloppier he'll become. And if he comes after you, I'm harder to hurt than you are. Ethan's voice was matter-of-fact. No family at this company, no vulnerable history he can exploit, and a skill set that makes me dangerous when provoked. If Adrian's smart, he'll leave me alone and focus on trying to discredit you through official channels. And if he's not smart, then he'll escalate and we'll have even more evidence. Ethan checked his watch. It's almost midnight. You should get back before someone notices you're gone. Lena nodded but didn't move immediately. Ethan, thank you for catching me, for believing me, for... Her voice cracked. For seeing me. You were always worth seeing. Ethan's voice was gentle. Adrian spent 3 years trying to convince you otherwise, but that was never about your value. It was about his emptiness. They walked back through the maintenance corridor in silence, Ethan checking corners before letting Lena proceed. The resort had settled into quiet, most guests asleep or drinking in the bar. The hallways empty except for occasional staff. At the junction where their paths diverged, Ethan stopped. One more thing. He pulled a business card from his wallet, writing something on the back. That's my personal cell, not the company number. If Adrian approaches you, threatens you, or makes you feel unsafe in any way, you call me immediately. I don't care what time it is. Understand? Lena took the card, her fingers brushing his. I understand. Good. Ethan hesitated, then added, You're not alone anymore, Lena. Remember that. Whatever happens next, you're not fighting this by yourself. She watched him walk away, his stride confident and controlled, and felt something shift fundamentally inside her. For 3 years, she'd believed Adrian's version of reality, that she was too damaged, too inadequate, too fundamentally wrong to deserve respect. But Ethan looked at her and saw competence, saw value, saw someone worth protecting. Maybe that was the real theft Adrian had committed. Not just stealing her work, but stealing her ability to see herself clearly. Her room was exactly as she'd left it, anonymous and sterile. Lena locked the door, checked the windows, then sat on the bed with her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before she opened a new document and began typing. Incident Report, March 19th, 2026. Reporter, Lena Elizabeth Cross. Incident, type, physical assault. Location, Resort Terrace, external stairwell. At approximately 8:47 p.m., I left the networking event to get air. I was approached on the exterior stairwell by Adrian Voss, Senior Vice President of Innovation. Mr. Voss grabbed my wrist and shoulder, then physically pushed me backward toward the terrace railing. I struck the railing with significant force. The railing gave way, and I would have fallen approximately 50 feet if not for the intervention of James Morrison, head of security, who pulled me back to safety. She continued typing, her hands steady now, documenting every detail she could remember. Adrian's words, his expression, the feeling of empty air behind her. Ethan's arms locking around her waist, the bruises already forming on her skin. When she finished, the report was 3 pages long, clinical, factual, devastating. She attached photos of her bruises, time-stamped and geotagged. Then she saved the document in 3 separate cloud storage accounts with different passwords. Adrian had taught her well, always keep evidence, always document, always have a backup plan. She just hadn't realized she'd be using those lessons against him. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Hotel security footage secured. Your incident report should be submitted to HR by 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'll submit mine simultaneously. Sleep if you can. We have a long fight ahead. E. Lena read the message 3 times, then saved Ethan's number in her contacts. Not under his name, she'd learned paranoia from Adrian too. She listed him simply as EC and marked the contact as important. Then she did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She opened the folder on her laptop labeled Personal Projects and looked at the code she'd written before Adrian, before the soul-crushing realization that brilliance didn't matter if you didn't have the right background, before she'd learned to make herself small. The predictive security algorithm stared back at her, elegant, powerful, revolutionary. her creation, her innovation, her proof that she was exactly as talented as she'd always believed before the world convinced her otherwise. He stole this, she whispered to the empty room. But he can't steal me. Somewhere in the resort, Adrian was probably sleeping peacefully, confident in his power and his ability to destroy anyone who threatened it. He'd pushed her off a terrace and walked away without consequence, the same way he'd stolen her work and her dignity for 3 years. But tomorrow morning, Lena would file an incident report that couldn't be ignored. Tomorrow, she would stop being invisible. Tomorrow, she would start fighting back with every weapon Ethan could provide and every truth she'd been too afraid to speak. Adrian Voss had made a critical mistake tonight. He'd underestimated her, assumed she'd stay quiet, stay small, stay broken. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. Lena closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and lay down in the darkness with her phone next to her pillow and Ethan's number on speed dial. Her shoulder throbbed. Her back ached. Fear still lived in her chest like a caged animal. But underneath it all, something new was growing. Something that felt like rage and hope and the absolute certainty that she was done being Adrian's victim. The fight was just beginning, and this time she wasn't fighting alone. Morning came too quickly. Lena woke at 6 to find her body had stiffened overnight, every movement pulling at bruises she'd tried to forget. She stood in the shower, letting hot water pound against her shoulders until the bathroom filled with steam, then dressed carefully in clothes that covered everything, long sleeves, high collar, dark colors that wouldn't show if she started bleeding through the fabric. The face in the mirror looked haunted, dark circles under her eyes, pallor that no amount of makeup could hide, but something else too. A hardness around her mouth that hadn't been there yesterday. She'd spent 3 years learning to disappear. Now she was learning to be seen, and it showed in the set of her jaw, the directness of her gaze. At 8:45, Lena walked into the resort's business center and submitted her incident report through the company HR portal. Her finger hovered over the send button for only a moment before she clicked it. No going back now. Her phone rang immediately. Not HR. That would take hours of bureaucratic processing. This was Ethan. Reports filed, she said without preamble. Mine too, along with the security footage and my witness statement. His voice was all business. HR's going to want to interview you today. Probably this afternoon once they've reviewed the materials. Don't go alone. What do you mean? I mean they'll try to isolate you, make you feel like you're overreacting or misremembering. Standard corporate damage control. Ethan's tone was grim. Tell them you want a witness present for any interview. That's your right as the complainant. And if they refuse? Then you refuse to participate without legal representation, which makes them look like they're hiding something. Lena could hear him moving, probably already working. Trust me, they don't want this going to lawyers yet. Too expensive, too public. They'll agree to let someone sit in. Will you? Lena stopped, hating how small her voice sounded. Can you be there? As my witness? I'm already planning on it. Ethan's voice softened slightly. You're not doing this alone, remember? That wasn't just something I said last night. Lena closed her eyes, steadying herself. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're about to make a lot of powerful people very uncomfortable. He paused. How are you holding up? Ask me after the interview. Fair enough. I'll meet you in the lobby at 2. That should give HR enough time to panic and schedule something. He was right. At 11:30, Lena received an email from Patricia Henderson, VP of Human Resources, requesting her presence at a 2:30 meeting in Conference Room B to discuss the incident from last evening. The language was carefully neutral, almost bored, as if physical assault was just another administrative matter requiring documentation. Lena spent the next 2 hours in a room, pulling together every piece of evidence she had. Code repositories showing her development of the predictive algorithm with timestamps that predated Adrian's presentation by 8 months. Email chains where she'd consulted external security experts about implementation challenges. Even handwritten notes from her original brainstorming sessions, photographed and dated. She organized it all into a digital folder, then created 3 backup copies on different cloud servers. If Adrian wanted to make this about her credibility versus his, she'd bury him in proof. At 2:15, Lena walked into the lobby to find Ethan waiting. He'd changed into a different suit, darker, more severe, the kind of outfit that said, take me seriously or regret it. His expression when he saw her was professionally neutral, but his eyes did a quick assessment, cataloging her carefully covered bruises and tight posture. "You ready?" he asked quietly. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's the spirit," Ethan gestured toward the elevator. "Remember, stick to facts. Don't let them put words in your mouth. And if they ask you to sign anything, tell them you need time to review it with legal counsel first." "You sound like you've done this before." "I've testified in enough military tribunals to know how institutions protect their own." His voice was hard. "HR isn't your friend here, Lena. They work for the company, and right now the company's biggest liability is Adrian Voss. They're going to try to make this go away quietly, which means pressuring you to accept some kind of settlement or transfer, or—" "I'm not taking a settlement." Lena's voice came out fiercer than she expected. "I'm not transferring. I'm not going anywhere until everyone knows what he did." Ethan's mouth curved slightly. "Good. Hold on to that." Conference room B was smaller than the presentation hall from yesterday, arranged for intimidation rather than collaboration. A long table dominated the space, Patricia Henderson already seated at the head with two other people Lena didn't recognize. Legal, probably. Their suits were too expensive and their expressions too blank to be anything else. "Miss Cross?" Patricia stood, extending her hand with practiced warmth that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult." Lena shook her hand briefly. "This is James Morrison, head of security. He's here as my witness." Patricia's smile flickered. "That's really not necessary. Ms. Cross has the right to a witness for any interview regarding a complaint she's filed." Ethan's voice was pleasant, implacable. "Company policy? Section 12? Paragraph 4. I checked this morning." One of the lawyers, a thin man with silver hair, made a note on his legal pad. Patricia's smile reset itself. "Of course. Please, both of you, sit." She gestured to the chairs across from her. "We're here simply to gather facts about what happened last night. Miss Cross, why don't you walk us through the incident in your own words?" Lena sat, her spine straight, hands folded on the table. "At approximately 8:47 p.m., I left the networking event to get some air. I was on the exterior stairwell when Adrian Voss approached me. He grabbed my wrist and shoulder, then physically pushed me backward. I hit the terrace railing hard enough that it gave way. I would have fallen 50 feet if Mr. Morrison hadn't pulled me back." That must have been terrifying. Patricia's concern was perfectly calibrated. "And you're certain Mr. Voss pushed you? It couldn't have been an accident. Perhaps he reached for you to steady you and you lost your balance?" "I'm certain." Lena met her gaze directly. "He grabbed me deliberately, pushed me deliberately, then stood there and watched me go over the railing." The second lawyer, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, spoke up. "Ms. Cross, we've reviewed the security footage Mr. Morrison provided. While it does show physical contact between you and Mr. Voss, the angle makes it difficult to determine intent. It could be interpreted as Mr. Voss attempting to help you." "Then you should watch it again." Ethan's voice was cold. "Because what I saw was clear assault. Mr. Voss grabbed Miss Cross with enough force to leave bruises, pushed her toward the railing, and made no attempt to catch her when she fell. The only reason she's alive is because I happened to be in position to intervene. Your interpretation is noted, Mr. Morrison." The male lawyer's tone was dismissive. "However, as a relatively new employee, you may not be aware of the complex personal history between Ms. Cross and Mr. Voss." "I'm aware." Ethan leaned back, his posture deceptively relaxed. "I'm aware they were previously engaged. I'm aware Mr. Voss ended the relationship and is now engaged to someone else. I'm also aware that none of that gives him the right to commit assault." Patricia raised her hands, placating. "No one is suggesting it does. We're simply trying to understand the full context. Ms. Cross, you and Mr. Voss have had a complicated relationship. Is it possible that emotions from that history colored your perception of what happened last night?" There it was. The suggestion that she was unreliable, emotional, letting personal feelings distort objective reality. "My perception," Lena said carefully, "is that Adrian Voss grabbed me, pushed me, and nearly killed me. Whether we were previously engaged is irrelevant to the fact that he committed assault." Of course, of course." Patricia's smile was sympathetic. "We're absolutely taking your complaint seriously. In fact, we've already spoken with Mr. Voss this morning. He's devastated about what happened and wanted us to convey his sincere apologies. Lena felt ice flooding her veins. You spoke with Adrian before interviewing me? Standard procedure. The female lawyer's expression was bland. We interview all parties involved in an incident report. And what did Adrian say? Lena's voice was tight. Patricia consulted her notes, though Lena suspected she had the words memorized. Mr. Voss stated that he was concerned about you after your presentation yesterday morning. He said you seemed distressed, potentially unstable. When he saw you on the terrace alone, he approached to check on your well-being. He reached out to steady you when you stumbled, but you pulled away and lost your balance. He's very shaken by how close you came to serious injury. The lies were so smooth, so perfectly constructed, that for a moment Lena almost doubted her own memory, almost believed that maybe she had stumbled, maybe she had misinterpreted, maybe she was the problem. Then she felt the bruises under her sleeves and remembered the coldness in Adrian's eyes as he'd whispered, "You were always too small for this world." That's not what happened. Her voice was steady. And I have evidence that proves it. Patricia's expression sharpened. Evidence? Lena pulled out her phone, opening the photos she'd taken last night. These are the bruises Adrian left on my wrist and shoulder. Photographed at 11 p.m. last night, time-stamped and geotagged. You can see the finger marks clearly. That's not consistent with someone trying to steady me. That's consistent with someone grabbing me hard enough to hurt. She passed the phone across the table. Patricia looked at the images, her professional mask slipping slightly. The bruises were vivid, dark purple fingerprints wrapped around Lena's wrist, a spreading shadow across her shoulder that disappeared under her shirt collar. These are certainly concerning. Patricia handed this phone to her lawyers, who examined the images with carefully neutral expressions. However, they don't necessarily prove intent. Mr. Voss could have grabbed you reflexively when you started to fall. Before I fell, Lena's interruption was sharp. The security footage will show he grabbed me before I lost balance, which means he wasn't steadying me. He was pushing me. The footage is somewhat ambiguous, the male lawyer began. The footage is crystal clear. Ethan's voice cut it through the room like a blade. I've reviewed it frame by frame. Adrian Voss approached Lena Cross on the stairs. He grabbed her wrist, then her shoulder. He pushed her backward with enough force to send her into the railing. The railing gave way. She went over. I caught her. At no point did Mr. Voss attempt to help, catch her, or express concern. He stood there and watched. Your interpretation, Patricia started, isn't an interpretation. Ethan pulled out his own phone, queuing up the footage. It's documentation. Would you like to see it? Because I can walk you through every frame that shows exactly what Adrian Voss did. The room went silent. Patricia exchanged glances with her lawyers, some unspoken communication passing between them. That won't be necessary right now. Patricia's smile was strained. We'll conduct our own review of the security materials. In the meantime, Ms. Cross, we want to assure you that Voss Industries takes all allegations of workplace violence extremely seriously. Allegations. Lena caught the word. You mean facts, documented facts. This isn't an allegation. It's assault, and you have video proof. We prefer not to use charged language until our investigation is complete. The female lawyer's tone was condescending. You understand this is a serious accusation with significant implications for all parties involved. I understand that Adrian Voss tried to kill me last night, and you're trying to protect him. Lena's voice was rising now, 3 years of suppressed rage finally finding release. I understand that you interviewed him first to give him time to construct a narrative. I understand that you're sitting here suggesting I'm emotional and unreliable when you have photographic evidence of assault and video footage of attempted murder. Ms. Cross, please calm down. Patricia's hands were up again, soothing. Don't tell me to calm down. Lena stood, her chair scraping back. Don't sit there in your expensive suit and tell me to calm down about the man who pushed me off a terrace. Don't minimize what happened because it's inconvenient for the company. Nobody's minimizing anything. Patricia stood too, her professional warmth finally cracking to show calculation underneath. But you need to understand that Mr. Voss is a senior executive with significant value to this organization. Any action we take against him requires absolute certainty about what occurred. We can't simply accept one person's version of events. You have my version, Ethan's version, security footage, and photographic evidence of injuries. Lena's hands were shaking now. What more do you need? A signed confession? We need to complete our investigation. Patricia's voice was firm, which means interviewing other witnesses, reviewing all available materials, and ensuring we have a complete understanding of the incident within its full context. Context? Lena laughed without humor. You mean finding ways to discredit me? Digging into my medical history, my therapy sessions, anything you can use to suggest I'm unstable or unreliable. Patricia's expression flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. Lena saw the truth there. They were already building their defense, already preparing to paint her as the problem. We would never inappropriately access your confidential medical information, Patricia began. But Adrian already has. The words came out before Lena could stop them. He's been accessing employee medical records for years, including mine, using confidential information to intimidate and control people who threaten him. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The lawyers stopped writing. Patricia went very still. That's a serious accusation. The male lawyer's voice was careful. Do you have evidence to support it? Lena looked at Ethan. He gave a small nod. I do. Lena kept her voice steady. Mr. Morrison has been conducting a security audit and discovered that Adrian's credentials have been used to access personnel files he has no legitimate reason to view. Medical records, therapy notes, financial information. My files have been accessed 47 times in the last 6 months alone. Patricia seemed genuinely shaken now. That would be a significant HIPAA violation. Multiple violations. It's also corporate espionage. Ethan's voice was hard. Because it's not just medical records. Adrian's been accessing intellectual property documentation, research projects, proprietary algorithms developed by employees under his supervision, then presenting that work as his own. You're accusing Mr. Voss of stealing employee innovations? The female lawyer's skepticism was palpable. I'm documenting it. Ethan pulled out a flash drive, setting it on the table. That contains access logs showing every file Adrian Voss accessed without authorization over the past 2 years. Personnel records, medical files, project documentation, all time-stamped, all verified. Patricia stared at the flash drive like it was a live grenade. Where did you get this? I'm head of security conducting an authorized audit of access protocols. Ethan's expression was neutral. It's literally my job to identify and document unauthorized access, which is what I've done. You should have reported this to HR immediately, Patricia started. I'm reporting it now. Ethan's voice was sharp. During an interview about Adrian Voss committing assault against an employee whose confidential medical records he's been illegally accessing for months. You'll forgive me if the timing seems relevant. The lawyers were writing furiously now, their professional masks slipping to show genuine concern. This wasn't just an interpersonal conflict anymore. This was institutional liability on a scale that could destroy the company. We'll need to review these materials. The male lawyer reached for the flash drive, but Ethan pulled it back. You'll get copies after I've secured the originals with legal counsel. His voice was ice. Because I've seen how this company handles inconvenient evidence, and I'm not letting this disappear into some locked filing cabinet. Mr. Morrison, that's company property. Patricia's voice rose. It's documentation of criminal activity. Ethan stood, his full height making the room feel suddenly smaller. HIPAA violations, corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, and assault, all committed by the same senior executive. Now you can handle this internally and quietly, or we can take it to federal regulators and law enforcement. Your choice. The silence that followed was absolute. Lena watched Patricia's face cycle through calculation, fear, and finally resignation. The lawyers exchanged glances, some rapid mental math happening behind their eyes about lawsuits and liability and public relations disasters. We'll need time to investigate these allegations thoroughly. Patricia's voice had lost its warmth entirely. In the meantime, we're placing both you and Mr. Voss on administrative leave pending the outcome of our inquiry. No. Lena's voice was flat. Patricia blinked. Excuse me? You're not putting me on leave for being assaulted. That's retaliation. Lena felt something fierce burning in her chest. Adrian committed multiple crimes. I reported them. Punishing me for reporting is illegal. It's not punishment. It's protocol, the female lawyer started. It's isolation. Ethan's voice was hard. You put Lena on leave, she loses access to her work, her colleagues, her ability to defend herself. Meanwhile, Adrian gets to craft his narrative with legal support and company resources. That's not protocol. That's silencing a victim. We're trying to protect Ms. Cross. Patricia's tone was defensive now. Then protect her by removing the person who assaulted her from the workplace. Lena's voice was steel. Put Adrian on leave. Not me. We can't take that kind of action against a senior executive without completing our investigation, the male lawyer said. But you can take it against a data architect? Lena leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. Let me be clear about something. If you put me on administrative leave while allowing Adrian to remain in his position, I will file a formal complaint with the EEOC for retaliation. I will contact every employee whose medical records were violated and inform them they have grounds for lawsuits. And I will go to the press with documentation showing that Voss Industries protects executives who commit assault and corporate espionage. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Patricia's face had gone pale. The lawyers had stopped writing entirely, frozen in the realization that this quiet, overlooked woman they'd planned to intimidate into silence had just turned the entire power dynamic on its head. Miss Cross, Patricia's voice was strained. You need to understand the position you're putting us in. I understand perfectly. Lena's voice was calm now, controlled. You're choosing between protecting a valuable executive and protecting your employees. You're choosing between a quiet internal scandal and a very public legal disaster. And you're realizing that the longer you wait to do the right thing, the worse this gets for everyone. What exactly are you proposing? The female lawyer's tone had shifted from dismissive to wary. Adrian goes on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Lena ticked off points on her fingers. All his access credentials are suspended, not just to medical records, to everything. You bring in an external investigator, not internal HR, to review the evidence of misconduct. And you make a public statement that the company takes allegations of assault and privacy violations seriously. Patricia looked at her lawyers, clearly out of her depth. We can't make those decisions unilaterally. The board would need to be involved. Then involve them. Ethan's voice was quiet but devastating. Because I guarantee the board would rather deal with this proactively than read about it in the Wall Street Journal. The male lawyer cleared his throat. We'll need to consult with senior leadership about next steps. In the meantime, Ms. Cross, we ask that you refrain from discussing this matter with other employees. No. Lena's interruption was sharp. I'm not agreeing to any gag order. If other employees ask why Adrian's suddenly on leave, I'm telling them the truth. That could jeopardize the investigation, Patricia started. What will jeopardize the investigation is letting Adrian control the narrative while you decide if his value to the company outweighs his crimes. Lena stood, gathering her phone. You have until Monday to put him on leave. After that, my lawyer, who I'm hiring this weekend, will be filing formal complaints with every relevant regulatory agency. Ms. Cross, please. Patricia's professional composure was completely gone now, replaced by genuine panic. You're not thinking clearly about the implications. I'm thinking very clearly. Lena's voice was steady. For the first time in 3 years, I'm seeing the situation exactly as it is. And what it is a company that's about to make a choice between doing what's right and doing what's comfortable. Choose wisely. She walked toward the door, Ethan falling into step beside her. Behind them, Patricia was already on her phone, her voice urgent as she spoke to someone above her pay grade. In the hallway, Lena's legs nearly gave out. Ethan caught her elbow, steadying her without drawing attention. You were amazing in there. His voice was low, intense, absolutely fearless. I was terrified. Lena's hands were shaking so hard she had to clench them into fists. I thought I was going to throw up. But you didn't. Ethan guided her toward a quiet alcove away from the main corridor. You stood your ground, laid out exactly what you needed, and made them understand the consequences of protecting Adrian. That's not terror, that's courage. Lena leaned against the wall, adrenaline draining away to leave exhaustion in its wake. They're going to fight this. Call their lawyers, build their defense, find ways to discredit me. Probably. Ethan's expression was grim. But you just forced them to acknowledge that this isn't going away quietly. That's huge, Lena. That's the difference between being a victim they can ignore and a threat they have to take seriously. I don't feel threatening. Lena's voice was small. I feel like I just declared war on people with unlimited resources. You did. Ethan's smile was sharp. But you're not fighting alone, and you have something they don't. The truth. Documented, undeniable truth. Lena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard you had an interesting meeting with HR. We should talk. Coffee tomorrow? Sarah Chen. Lena stared at the message, her heart kicking hard against her ribs. How did Sarah Chen get my number? Ethan's expression was satisfied. I may have reached out to some of Adrian's previous victims, told them someone was finally building a case, and asked if they'd be willing to share their experiences. You contacted them without telling me? I contacted them while you were being prepared to face HR alone. Ethan's voice was unapologetic. You needed backup, Lena, and they needed to know someone was finally holding Adrian accountable. Lena read the message again. Sarah Chen, the developer from Meridian Tech who'd quit after Adrian stole her cloud architecture design. If she was willing to talk, willing to add her voice to the evidence. How many others? Lena asked quietly. 5 so far. Sarah, Marcus Reed from Fortress Systems, and 3 women from Adrian's time at previous companies who experienced similar patterns. Ethan pulled out his phone, showing her a list of names and contact information. They all have stories, they all have evidence, and they're all waiting for someone to give them a reason to come forward. And I'm that reason? You're the first person who had the courage to fight back while still inside the system. Ethan's voice was intense. Everyone else left, took settlements, signed NDAs to make the pain stop. But you're still here, still standing. That matters, Lena. That gives them hope that maybe this time the predator actually faces consequences. Lena felt something shifting inside her, some fundamental reorientation of how she saw herself, not as Adrian's victim, not as the broken woman who couldn't measure up, but as the beginning of something larger, a reckoning that had been building for years across multiple companies, multiple victims, multiple people Adrian had destroyed because he thought he was untouchable. Set up the meeting with Sarah. Lena's voice was steady now. And anyone else who's willing to talk. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Every victim, every theft, every violation documented and presented together. Ethan's smile was fierce. Now you're thinking like someone who wants to win. I don't just want to win. Lena met his gaze directly. I want to make sure Adrian Voss never hurts anyone again. Ever. They stood in the quiet alcove, the resort's elegant facade continuing around them. People in expensive clothes having expensive conversations about expensive problems. None of them knowing that in a conference room down the hall, the foundation of their comfortable world had just developed a crack that would soon become a chasm. Lena's phone buzzed again. This time, it was her father. Heard from your boss you're taking some personal time this weekend. Everything okay? Her father, William Cross, who'd built a modest restaurant from nothing, who'd lost everything to a cyber attack he couldn't defend against, who'd taught Lena to code because he couldn't afford to hire professionals. The man who'd hidden her talent because he thought making her invisible would keep her safe. For 3 years, Lena had believed he was right. That being small, being quiet, being invisible was the only way to survive in a world built for people like Adrian. But standing here in the aftermath of her declaration of war, she realized her father had taught her something else too. When the restaurant was hacked, when everything was falling apart, he hadn't hidden. He'd fought, called lawyers, filed complaints, refused to let the people who'd hurt him disappear without consequences. He'd lost that fight. The hackers were never caught. The restaurant closed 6 months later. But he'd fought anyway because some things mattered more than winning, like dignity, like justice, like refusing to let cruelty go unnamed. Everything's complicated, Dad, Lena typed back carefully. But I'm handling it. I'll call you this weekend and explain. She put her phone away, looking at Ethan. What happens now? Now we prepare for war. Ethan's voice was matter of fact. Patricia's going to escalate this to the executive team. They'll bring in their best lawyers, crisis management consultants, maybe private investigators to dig into your background. They'll look for anything they can use to discredit you, Financial problems, relationship issues, anything that makes you look unstable or vindictive. They won't find anything. Lena's voice was steady. I've lived clean specifically because I was terrified people would use my past against me. Good. That makes our job easier. Ethan checked his watch. We should get out of here. Too many ears in this resort. They walked through the lobby in silence, past clusters of executives networking and laughing, past the bar where Adrian probably sat holding court, past the terrace where hours ago Lena had nearly died. The California sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange, beautiful enough to hurt. Outside, Ethan led her to the parking lot, stopping beside a dark SUV that screamed ex-military precision. He opened the passenger door for her, then circled to the driver's side. Where are we going? Lena asked as he pulled out onto the coastal highway. Somewhere we can talk without being recorded or observed. Ethan's eyes scanned the mirrors constantly, watching for surveillance she wouldn't have noticed. There's a diner about 20 miles south, local place, no corporate connections. We can plan our next moves without worrying about who's listening. The drive took them away from the resort's manufactured elegance into scrubby California coastal towns where real people lived real lives. Strip malls and gas stations and houses that had been there before tech money turned the coastline into a playground for the rich. The diner was exactly as advertised: vinyl booths, fluorescent lights, laminated menus that had been printed sometime in the 90s. They took a corner booth with sight lines to all entrances. Ethan ordered coffee. Lena ordered tea she wouldn't drink. Talk to me about the algorithm. Ethan pulled out his notebook, all business now. The predictive security system Adrian presented as his innovation. I need to understand exactly what makes it yours. Lena took a breath, organizing 3 years of rage into coherent explanation. Traditional security systems are reactive. They respond to threats after they're detected. But there's always a lag time between intrusion and detection. What I designed was a predictive model that identifies threat patterns before they become active breaches. How? By analyzing behavioral data across multiple vectors, user access patterns, network traffic anomalies, even subtle changes in how systems are queried. Lena's voice steadied as she moved into territory where she was unquestionably expert. The algorithm learns what normal looks like for each user and system, then flags deviations before they escalate into actual attacks. Ethan wrote quickly. And Adrian presented this as his own work? He repackaged it, changed the terminology from behavioral prediction to adaptive threat intelligence, simplified my implementation architecture to make it sound more accessible, but the core framework was mine. Lena pulled out her laptop, opening files. I can show you the development timeline. My initial proof of concept was built 16 months before Adrian's presentation. Every major innovation he claimed was already documented in my research. Can you prove it? Definitively? Yes. Lena turned the laptop toward him. Code repositories with commit histories, email correspondence with external consultants, even video from a security conference where I presented an early version to a small audience 6 months before Adrian's big reveal. Ethan studied the screen, his expression darkening. This isn't just theft, it's fraud. He presented your work to the board, secured funding based on your innovation, then took credit for revenue growth that resulted from your creation, and got promoted to senior VP because of it. Lena's voice was bitter. While I stayed a data architect with no recognition, no advancement, no acknowledgement that I'd built the thing that made this company an industry leader. Did anyone else know it was your work? A few people in the technical team, but Adrian was careful to credit them with implementation support while positioning himself as the visionary architect. Lena closed her laptop. And when you're a senior executive claiming innovation, people believe you. Why would they think you were stealing from a junior employee with no pedigree and no power? Because senior executives stealing from subordinates is practically an industry standard. Ethan's voice was hard. Which is why we're going to make an example of him. Not just for you, but for every person who's been erased so someone more powerful could claim their brilliance. Lena felt something unlock in her chest. For 3 years, she'd believed Adrian's theft was a personal failing. That if she'd been more impressive, more credible, more obviously talented, he couldn't have stolen from her. But Ethan was right. This wasn't about her inadequacy. It was about a system that enabled theft because the people in power knew they could get away with it. The other victims. Lena's voice was quiet. Sarah and Marcus and the others. What did Adrian steal from them? Ethan flipped through his notebook. Sarah developed a cloud migration framework that reduced infrastructure costs by 40%. 6 months after she presented it to Adrian's division, he rolled it out company-wide with his name on the patents. Sarah quit 3 months later. He turned a page. Marcus created a threat assessment matrix that became the foundation for Fortress Systems government contracts. Adrian presented it at a defense industry conference, got recruited away for twice his salary, and left Marcus behind with a performance review that destroyed his career prospects. Why didn't they fight back? They tried. Both filed internal complaints. Both were told there wasn't sufficient evidence to prove sole authorship of collaborative work. Both were encouraged to accept settlement packages and sign NDAs rather than face drawn-out legal battles against company resources. Ethan's expression was grim. Adrian's good at picking victims who can't afford to fight. People with student loans, medical debt, family obligations. People who need their jobs more than they need justice. And he thought I was one of them. Lena's voice was flat. Someone too damaged, too desperate, too afraid to push back. He thought wrong. Ethan met her gaze. You're still here, still fighting, and now you're building an army of everyone he underestimated. Lena's phone buzzed. Another message from Sarah Chen. I have documentation. Everything he stole, every lie he told. If you're serious about taking him down, I'm in, whatever it takes. Lena showed Ethan the message. He smiled, sharp and satisfied. That's the beginning. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I'm connecting you with Marcus and the others. Create a group thread. Share evidence. Coordinate testimonies. The more voices we have, the harder it is for Voss Industries to dismiss this as one disgruntled employee. They'll say we're conspiring against Adrian. Lena could already hear Patricia's voice, smooth and concerned. That we're coordinating false allegations. Let them try. Ethan's voice was steel. Because what we actually have is multiple independent victims with corroborating evidence spanning years and companies. That's not conspiracy. That's a pattern, and patterns don't lie. They spent the next 2 hours in that diner booth building what Ethan called the architecture of accountability. Lists of evidence, timelines of theft, contact information for witnesses who could verify each victim's claims. Lena watched the case take shape, transforming from her private humiliation into something larger and more powerful. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Sarah and Marcus and every other brilliant person Adrian had used and discarded. It was about changing a system that protected predators because they were profitable. By the time they left, it was full dark outside. Ethan drove her back toward the resort in silence, both of them exhausted from the emotional weight of what they'd built. You should know something. Ethan's voice was quiet as they pulled into the resort parking lot. Adrian's going to escalate. The harder we push, the more dangerous he'll become. Men like him don't accept losing, especially not to people they've decided are beneath them. I know. Lena's voice was steady. I'm ready. Are you? Ethan turned to face her, his expression serious. Because ready means understanding he might try to hurt you again. Might spread lies, destroy your reputation, even attempt physical violence. Ready means accepting that this fight could cost you everything you've built here. Lena thought about that. About her career at Voss Industries, her apartment she could barely afford, her carefully constructed professional identity. Everything she'd sacrificed for, everything she'd endured to build. Then she thought about the woman who'd stood in conference room B and told 3 lawyers and an HR director exactly what she demanded. The woman who'd looked at institutional power and refused to blink. I already lost everything when Adrian stole my work and my dignity. Lena's voice was firm. Now I'm just taking it back, whatever the cost. Ethan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right then, war it is. They parted in the parking lot, Ethan watching until Lena was safely inside the resort. She walked through the lobby with her shoulders back, her head high, not hiding anymore. In her room, Lena opened her laptop and began drafting an email to the group thread Ethan had started. Sarah, Marcus, and 3 other names she didn't recognize yet, but would soon know intimately. Her allies.
her army. My name is Lena Cross. Adrian Voss stole 18 months of my work and presented it as his own innovation. He accessed my confidential medical records to map my vulnerabilities. And last night he pushed me off a terrace when I threatened to expose him. I'm done being silent. If you are too, let's end him together. She hit send before she could second-guess herself.
Within minutes, responses started coming in. Stories of theft and violation and systematic destruction, but also stories of survival, of evidence carefully preserved, of people who'd been waiting years for someone to finally say, enough. Lena read each one, feeling the weight of their collective rage and pain and hope. Adrian had spent years making each of them feel alone, insignificant, disposable. He was about to learn what happened when disposable people stopped accepting their disposal. The board meeting happened faster than anyone expected. 72 hours after Lena's confrontation with HR, she received a terse email summoning her to Voss Industries headquarters for an emergency executive session. No details, no agenda, just a time and room number that made her stomach drop. The top floor. The boardroom where careers were made and destroyed. Ethan met her in the lobby at 8 a.m. sharp, carrying a leather briefcase that looked expensive enough to be tactical. You ready for this? Lena adjusted the strap of her laptop bag, feeling the weight of evidence inside. Code repositories, email chains, testimony from 5 victims spanning 3 companies. Everything they'd built over the last 3 days, organized into a presentation that would either vindicate her or end her career. Define ready, she said. Still standing, still breathing, still willing to walk into that room and tell the truth. Ethan's voice was steady. That's all ready has to mean right now. They rode the elevator in silence, watching the numbers climb. Lena's reflection in the polished steel doors looked alien. Professional blazer borrowed from Sarah Chen, hair pulled back severely, the kind of armor women wore when they needed to be taken seriously. She barely recognized herself. The boardroom was everything intimidation architecture promised. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 20, leather chairs that cost more than Lena's monthly rent. 12 people were already seated, board members she recognized from company newsletters, executives whose decisions shaped thousands of lives. And at the head of the table, CEO Richard Voss himself. Adrian's father. Lena's heart stuttered. Nobody had mentioned Richard would be here personally. He usually delegated operational matters to subordinates, too important for internal conflicts. His presence meant this was bigger than she'd realized. Adrian sat 3 chairs down from his father, flanked by 2 lawyers who radiated expensive competence. He looked tired but composed, his suit immaculate, his expression carefully neutral. When Lena entered, his eyes met hers for just a second, cold calculation with something darker underneath. Ms. Cross, Mr. Morrison. Richard Voss's voice was measured, executive-level calm. Please sit. They took chairs across from Adrian, the table a battlefield between them. Lena set down her laptop with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. I'll be direct, Richard continued. We're here because serious allegations have been made against my son. Allegations that, if true, represent significant legal and ethical violations. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence provided by Mr. Morrison and consulted with our legal team. What we need now is clarity. With respect, Mr. Voss, one of Adrian's lawyers interjected, this meeting is highly irregular. Our client has rights. Your client is accused of assault, corporate espionage, and systematic theft of intellectual property. Richard's voice was ice. The irregularity is that we're handling this internally, at all, rather than immediately involving law enforcement. So I suggest you let me conduct this meeting my way. The lawyer went silent. Adrian's jaw tightened fractionally. Richard turned to Lena. Ms. Cross, you filed a complaint alleging that Adrian physically assaulted you at the corporate retreat. You've also claimed he's been illegally accessing employee medical records and stealing proprietary work. These are extraordinary accusations. I need you to substantiate them. Now. Lena opened her laptop, her fingers steady now that the moment was here. I can do better than substantiate them. I can prove them beyond any reasonable doubt. She pulled up the first file, security footage from the terrace, cued to the exact moment Adrian grabbed her. The boardroom's display screen flickered to life, showing the scene in harsh detail. Adrian approaching, his hand closing around her wrist. The push. Lena hitting the railing, the metal giving way. Ethan's intervention saving her from a 50-foot fall. The board watched in absolute silence. Lena heard someone inhale sharply. Richard's expression remained neutral, but his knuckles whitened where he gripped his pen. "The footage is clear," Lena said quietly. Adrian Voss grabbed me with enough force to leave bruises. She pulled up the time-stamped photos and pushed me toward a railing he knew was unstable. If Mr. Morrison hadn't been present, I would have died. This wasn't an accident, it was assault. That footage proves nothing about intent. Adrian's voice was controlled. I reached for Lena because she was unstable, emotionally and physically. She'd been erratic all evening, drinking heavily. I had one glass of sparkling water. Lena's interruption was sharp. The bar receipts from that night show 0 alcohol purchases under my name or room number. Would you like me to submit those as evidence too? Adrian's composure cracked slightly. You were upset. Anyone could see that. I was trying to help. Help by pushing me off a terrace? Lena's voice was steel. Help by grabbing me hard enough to leave finger-shaped bruises? That's an interesting definition of help, Adrian. Miss Cross, please. Richard raised a hand. Let's maintain professional discourse. Adrian, you'll have your opportunity to respond. But first, I want to hear the rest of her allegations. Lena pulled up the access logs Ethan had documented. For the past 2 years, Adrian has been using his executive credentials to access employee files he has no authorization to view. Medical records, therapy session notes, financial documents. My files alone were accessed 47 times in 6 months. She scrolled through the data, highlighting entries. Here, Adrian accessed my employee health intake forms where I disclosed my father's financial struggles. 3 days later, he referenced those struggles during a presentation to undermine my credibility. Here, he accessed therapy notes about my panic attacks. That same week, he began suggesting in meetings that I was too emotional for high-pressure projects. Those are confidential medical records, one board member said, his voice appalled. The legal exposure alone is extensive, Ethan confirmed. HIPAA violations, breach of privacy, grounds for federal investigation. But it gets worse. Adrian didn't just access records. He used that information to systematically destroy employee credibility and steal their innovations. Lena switched to her next presentation, side-by-side comparisons of her original algorithm documentation and Adrian's supposedly original work. Code architecture diagrams, development timelines, email correspondence with consultants. The predictive security algorithm that made Voss Industries an industry leader wasn't developed by Adrian Voss. I created it over 18 months, documented every step, consulted with external experts who can verify my work. She pulled up dated emails, commit histories, even video footage from a security conference where she'd presented early concepts. Adrian took my research, repackaged it with different terminology, and presented it to this board as his own innovation. He was promoted to senior VP based on work he stole from me. That's absurd. Adrian's voice was rising now, control slipping. I've been developing security frameworks since graduate school. Just because Lena worked on implementation doesn't mean she created the underlying architecture. Here's my graduate thesis. Lena pulled up another file. Published 8 months before I joined this company, the framework is identical to what you presented. Every major innovation you claimed was already documented in my academic work that predates your employment here. The boardroom went silent. Adrian's face was flushing now, his lawyers exchanging urgent whispers. But I'm not the only victim. Lena's voice was steady. Adrian has been doing this for years, across multiple companies, identifying talented employees, mining their expertise, then discarding them when they became liabilities. Ethan pulled up a new presentation, testimony from Sarah Chen, Marcus Reed, and 3 other former employees. Each one documented the same pattern: stolen work, accessed medical records, strategic destruction of careers. Sarah Chen developed a cloud migration framework that Adrian patented under his own name. Marcus Reed created threat assessment protocols that Adrian used to secure government contracts for his previous employer. The pattern is consistent: find vulnerable talent, extract innovation, eliminate the source. These are disgruntled former employees with axes to grind. One of Adrian's lawyers tried to regain control, coordinating false testimonies to damage our client's reputation. Their testimonies are independently verifiable, Ethan said coldly. Patent filings with timestamps, code repositories, email chains. Every single claim is backed by documentation that predates any coordination between victims. This isn't conspiracy, it's pattern recognition. Richard Voss had been silent throughout, his expression unreadable. Now he leaned forward, his eyes on his son. Adrian, you have 30 seconds to convince me why I shouldn't immediately terminate your employment and refer this matter to law enforcement. Adrian stood, his composure shattering completely. Because I made this company what it is. I brought in millions in revenue, secured contracts that put us on the map, built our reputation with stolen work, Lena said quietly. Every innovation you claimed, every success you celebrated, built on people you erased. You didn't make this company successful, Adrian. You made it complicit in theft and fraud. You're nobody. Adrian's voice was raw now, 3 years of mask finally dropping. A community college dropout with no credentials, no connections, nothing that matters. I gave you visibility. I made people take you seriously. And this is how you repay me? By trying to destroy everything I've built? You destroyed yourself. Lena stood too, facing him across the table. The moment you decided stealing was easier than creating. The moment you pushed me off that terrace because I threatened to expose you. You did this, Adrian, all of it. She's lying. Adrian turned to his father, desperate now. She's unstable. Read her therapy notes. She admits to paranoia, anxiety, imposter syndrome. She's fabricating this entire narrative because I ended our relationship. Those therapy notes, Richard's voice was dangerously quiet, that you illegally accessed to use as ammunition. Thank you for confirming that part of Ms. Cross's allegations. Adrian went pale. I was concerned about her mental health. You were building a defense. Ethan's voice was hard. Mapping her vulnerabilities so you could weaponize them if she ever fought back, just like you did with every other victim. The only mistake you made was thinking Lena would break the way the others did. The board members were whispering now, urgent conversations about liability and legal exposure and damage control. Richard held up his hand for silence. I've heard enough. His voice carried absolute authority. Adrian, you are hereby terminated for cause, effective immediately. All credentials are suspended, all company property must be returned, and you are banned from these premises. Our legal team will be coordinating with law enforcement regarding criminal charges for assault and privacy violations. You can't do this, Adrian's voice cracked. I'm your son, which makes your behavior even more inexcusable. Richard's expression was granite. I built this company on integrity. You've turned it into a shelter for theft and abuse. That ends now. He turned to Lena, his voice softening fractionally. Miss Cross, on behalf of Voss Industries, I apologize for what was done to you, for what was stolen from you, and for the systematic failure of leadership that allowed it to continue. We'll be offering full restitution for your stolen intellectual property, including retroactive compensation and public acknowledgement of your contributions. Lena felt tears pressing at her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of Adrian. I also want to offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer, reporting directly to me. Your innovations built this company's success. It's time everyone knew that. Richard's voice was firm. You've more than earned the recognition and authority that should have been yours from the beginning. The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Adrian was still standing, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. His lawyers were packing briefcases, clearly calculating how to minimize their own liability. I accept, Lena said quietly. On one condition. Every employee whose records Adrian accessed gets notified and offered legal support. Everyone he stole from gets the same opportunity for restitution I'm receiving. This doesn't end with me. Richard nodded slowly. Agreed. We'll be conducting a comprehensive review of all Adrian's activities and reaching out to anyone affected. You have my word. Security was already moving toward Adrian, professional but firm. He shook them off, his eyes locked on Lena with pure hatred. This isn't over, he said, his voice low and venomous. You think you've won? You've just made yourself a target. I have connections, resources, people who owe me favors, and I have the truth. Lena's voice was steady. Along with federal investigators who are very interested in your pattern of behavior across multiple companies. So please, Adrian, try something. Give them one more reason to ensure you never work in this industry again. Adrian looked at his father, some desperate appeal in his eyes. Richard turned away, his expression cold. Escort him out, Richard said to security, and make sure he understands that any attempt to contact Ms. Cross or any other employee will be treated as harassment and reported immediately. They led Adrian away, his protest fading as the elevator doors closed. The boardroom remained silent for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Finally, Richard spoke again. Ms. Cross, Mr. Morrison, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I know it took tremendous courage to challenge someone with Adrian's position and family connections. That courage won't be forgotten. Lena felt Ethan's hand brush her elbow, a small gesture of support. We did what was right, she said. That shouldn't require courage. It should be the baseline expectation. You're not wrong. Richard's voice was tired now, the weight of his son's crime showing in his expression. We'll be implementing new oversight protocols, mandatory ethics training, and independent audits of all executive access to confidential systems. What happened here can never happen again. The meeting dissolved into logistics, paperwork for Lena's new position, coordination with legal teams, scheduling for comprehensive reviews. Lena moved through it in a daze, signing documents that fundamentally altered her life while her mind struggled to process that it was real. Adrian was gone, fired, facing criminal charges, his career destroyed by the same evidence he'd tried to use against her. She'd won. In the elevator riding back down, Ethan finally smiled, genuine warmth breaking through his tactical composure. Chief Technology Officer, how does that feel? Surreal. Lena's voice was shaky. 3 days ago, I was a data architect nobody noticed. Now I'm finally being recognized for what you've always been. Ethan's voice was firm, brilliant, innovative, irreplaceable. Adrian didn't make you those things, Lena. He just tried to steal credit for them. The lobby was busy with employees starting their workday, none of them knowing that the company's entire power structure had just shifted. Lena watched them move through their routines, coffee runs, elevator waits, casual conversations, and felt the surreal disconnect of her internal earthquake against their ordinary morning. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sarah Chen. Just heard Adrian was terminated. Is it true? Did we actually win? Lena typed back quickly. He's gone, fired for cause, facing criminal charges, and we're all getting restitution for what he stole. We won, Sarah. We actually won. The response came immediately, just 3 words followed by a string of celebration emojis. We did it. More messages started flooding in from the group thread. Marcus, the others, all of them processing the impossible reality that the predator who'd destroyed their careers was finally facing consequences. Lena stood in the lobby reading their messages, feeling the weight of collective relief and vindication. They'd all been invisible once, all been dismissed and discredited and told they were the problem. Now they were the solution. The proof that speaking truth to power could actually work if you had enough courage and enough evidence. Come on. Ethan touched her shoulder gently. Let's get you home. You've had enough corporate drama for one day. They walked out into morning sunlight that felt different somehow, sharper, cleaner, like the air had been scrubbed of poison. Lena's phone kept buzzing with messages, but she silenced it, needing just a moment of quiet to process everything. Ethan? Her voice was small. Thank you for believing me, for standing with me when I couldn't stand alone, for... Stop. His interruption was gentle. You did the hard part. All I did was make sure you had the tools and support to fight. The courage, the refusal to back down, that was all you. Lena felt tears finally breaking free. 3 years of suppressed emotion flooding out in the safety of someone who'd proven he wouldn't use her vulnerability against her. Ethan pulled her into a hug, solid, steady, the kind of embrace that said, I've got you, without words. They stood like that in the parking lot while Lena cried, releasing grief and rage and relief in equal measure. When she finally pulled back, Ethan handed her a handkerchief like he'd been prepared for this moment. Better? He asked. Getting there. Lena wiped her eyes,
probably destroying whatever remained of her careful makeup. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Adrian to find some way to come back, to hurt me. He won't. Ethan's voice was absolute certainty. His career is over, his reputation is destroyed, and he's about to face criminal prosecution that will make sure everyone knows exactly what he is. He's done, Lena. Completely and permanently done. She wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe this was really the end, that she could finally stop looking over her shoulder for the next attack. What happens now? The question felt enormous. I'm CTO of a major tech company. I have authority and visibility, and I don't know how to do this. How to be the person everyone's going to be watching. The same way you did everything else. Ethan's smile was gentle. With integrity, brilliance, and the absolute refusal to let anyone make you smaller than you are. You've got this, Lena, and if you ever doubt that, you've got an entire group of people who watched you take down a predator to remind you exactly how powerful you really are. Lena looked at him, this unexpected ally who'd appeared at exactly the right moment, who'd seen her value when she couldn't see it herself, who'd helped her build a case strong enough to destroy someone who'd seemed untouchable. "What about you?" she asked quietly. "You're head of security who just helped take down the CEO's son. That can't be comfortable." Richard Voss strikes me as someone who values integrity over nepotism. Ethan shrugged. "Besides, my job is protecting the company from threats. Adrian was the biggest threat we had. I was just doing what I was hired to do." "You were doing more than that." Lena's voice was firm. "You were protecting someone who needed it. That matters, Ethan, more than you know." They stood in the parking lot a moment longer, the morning sun warming away the chill of corporate air conditioning. Somewhere in the building behind them, Richard Voss was probably dealing with the fallout of firing his own son. Somewhere in the city, Adrian was processing that his world had just imploded. But here, in this moment, Lena felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Safe, seen, victorious. The woman who'd been invisible had just rewritten the entire story. And the ending, her ending, was finally her own. 3 months later, Lena stood in her new office. Corner view, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of space that announced importance to anyone who walked past. Her name was on the door now, etched in steel and glass. Chief Technology Officer. The title still felt surreal some mornings, like a costume she was wearing rather than an identity she'd earned. But the work was real. The innovations were hers. And slowly, painfully, she was learning to believe she deserved to be here. Her phone rang. Her father. "Hey, Dad," Lena smiled, turning toward the window where the city sprawled below her like proof of possibility. "Just calling to check in. How's my CTO daughter doing?" William Cross's voice carried pride that still made Lena's throat tight. After Adrian's termination became public, she'd finally told her father everything. The theft, the abuse, the 3 years of systematic destruction. He'd cried. Then he'd driven 6 hours to her apartment and held her while she cried too. Surviving. Thriving, actually. Lena watched traffic moving far below. "We just finalized the new security protocol implementation. It's going to change how the entire industry approaches threat assessment." "Using your algorithm?" Her father's voice was warm, the one that lazy parasite tried to steal. "Using my algorithm," Lena felt satisfaction warming her chest. "With my name on the patents this time. And proper attribution in every presentation, every paper, every conversation. Richard's made sure of that." Richard Voss had been true to his word. In the 3 months since Adrian's termination, he'd systematically corrected the record. Press releases acknowledging Lena's contributions, internal memos crediting her innovations, even a company-wide presentation where he'd publicly apologized for the institutional failures that had allowed Adrian's theft to continue unchallenged. It hadn't been comfortable. Some executives resented the implication that they'd been complicit through negligence. Some employees whispered that Lena had slept her way to the top, that she'd weaponized a relationship gone wrong. But Richard had shut down every whisper with documentation that proved exactly who'd created what. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart." Her father's voice cracked slightly. "I know I tried to make you invisible. Thought that would keep you safe. I was wrong. You were always meant to be seen. You were protecting me the best way you knew how." Lena's voice was gentle. "I understand that now. You'd watched the world punish you for being vulnerable. You didn't want the same thing to happen to me. Still, I should have taught you to fight instead of hide. William cleared his throat. But you figured that out yourself. That's the Cross stubbornness coming through. They talked for another 10 minutes about family, about his plans to maybe reopen the restaurant now that Lena had quietly paid off his debts, about ordinary, beautiful things that felt like healing. When they hung up, Lena felt lighter than she had in years. A knock on her door. Ethan leaned against the frame, carrying 2 coffee cups from the place down the street that knew how Lena liked her tea. "Got a minute?" he asked. "For you?" "Always." Lena gestured him in, taking the cup he offered. 3 months of working closely had transformed their crisis alliance into something deeper, friendship built on mutual respect, shared values, and the kind of trust that came from facing monsters together. Ethan settled into the chair across from her desk, his expression thoughtful. "Just got word from the DA's office. Adrian pled guilty to the assault charges. He's taking a deal, 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation, mandatory anger management, and therapy." Lena set down her cup carefully. 6 months. For pushing me off a terrace. For first-time offense with a good lawyer and family connections making the alternative. A trial that would expose even more crimes, unpalatable for everyone. Ethan's voice was grim. "It's not justice, but it's accountability. He'll have a criminal record. He'll be unemployable in this industry. And the civil suits from the other victims are going to bankrupt him." Sarah Chen, Marcus Reed, and 4 others had filed a joint lawsuit seeking damages for stolen intellectual property and privacy violations. Their lawyers were confident. Adrian's were scrambling. "I should feel satisfied." Lena's voice was quiet. "He's facing consequences, real, permanent consequences. So why do I still feel angry?" "Because 6 months doesn't equal 3 years of stolen work and systematic abuse." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes understanding. "Because the punishment never quite matches the crime when the criminal has resources and connections. Because you wanted him to suffer the way you suffered, and the justice system doesn't work that way." Lena looked at him, this man who'd somehow become essential to her sense of safety. "Is that wrong? Wanting him to hurt?" "It's human." Ethan's voice was gentle. "You're allowed to be angry, Lena. You're allowed to want proportional consequences. Just don't let that anger consume the victory. Adrian's career is destroyed. His reputation is ruined. He'll never have power over anyone again. That matters, even if it doesn't feel like enough." "You're right." Lena took a breath, releasing some of the rage she'd been carrying. "I keep waiting for closure, for some moment where everything feels resolved. But maybe that's not how this works." "Healing isn't linear." Ethan smiled slightly. "Trust me, I learned that the hard way after leaving the military. You just keep moving forward, keep building the life you deserve, and one day you realize the past hurts less than it used to." Speaking of moving forward, Lena shifted, nervous suddenly. "I've been thinking about the security team structure. We need someone with your expertise leading threat assessment full-time. I'd like to promote you to Chief Security Officer, reporting directly to me." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "That's a significant promotion." "You've earned it." Lena's voice was firm. "You identified the biggest internal threat this company faced, built the case that exposed him, and protected employees who couldn't protect themselves. That's exactly what a CSO should do." "I was protecting you specifically." Ethan's voice was quiet. "That's different from protecting the institution." "Is it?" Lena met his gaze. "Because from where I'm sitting, protecting me meant protecting everyone Adrian would have hurt next." "You stopped a pattern, Ethan. That's institutional protection." He was quiet for a moment, something shifting in his expression. "Can I be honest about something?" "Always." "When I took this job, I told myself it was about clean work, corporate security, no moral complications, nothing that would keep me up at night." Ethan's voice was careful. "But watching you fight Adrian, seeing how institutions enable abuse through negligence and cowardice, it reminded me why I became a Marine in the first place, to stand between predators and prey, to use power to protect people who don't have it." "And?" Lena's heart was beating faster. "And I think I'd like to keep doing that. Here, with you building something better." Ethan's smile was genuine.
So yes, I accept. On one condition. What condition? That when I inevitably piss off another senior executive by investigating their misconduct, you have my back the way I had yours. Lena extended her hand across the desk. Deal. We protect each other. That's non-negotiable. They shook on it, and Lena felt something settle in her chest. The knowledge that she wasn't fighting alone anymore, that she'd built alliances strong enough to weather whatever came next. Her office phone rang. Reception. Ms. Cross, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal. The receptionist's voice was uncertain. A woman named Vanessa Klein? Lena's stomach dropped. Vanessa. Adrian's fiancée. The woman who'd been wearing white at the networking event, planning a wedding that would never happen now. Send her up. Lena's voice was steadier than she felt. Ethan stood immediately. You want me to stay? No, this is something I need to do alone. Lena managed to smile. But thank you for always offering. He left reluctantly, passing Vanessa in the doorway. She looked different from the polished executive Lena remembered. Thinner, tired, her expensive clothes hanging loose like she'd lost weight rapidly. Her engagement ring was gone. Thank you for seeing me. Vanessa's voice was hoarse. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Lena gestured to the chair Ethan had vacated. What do you want, Vanessa? Vanessa sat, her hands twisting in her lap. I wanted to apologize for everything I said about you, every rumor I spread, every time I made you feel small because it made Adrian happy. Lena waited, offering nothing. I didn't know. Vanessa's voice cracked. About the theft, the medical records, any of it. I thought you were bitter about the breakup, that you couldn't accept that Adrian had moved on, so I helped him destroy your credibility because I believed his version of reality. And now, Lena's voice was flat. Now I know what he is. Vanessa's eyes were red-rimmed. After everything came out, I started looking at my own work. Projects I'd discussed with him in confidence. Ideas I'd mentioned casually that later appeared in his presentations. He was doing to me what he'd done to you, just slower, more subtle, because he needed me intact long enough to secure his position. Lena felt a flicker of sympathy she didn't want to feel. Did you come here for absolution? Because I can't give you that, Vanessa. You helped him hurt me. You participated in my destruction willingly. I know. Vanessa's voice was barely audible. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. The pattern, the manipulation, the way he made everyone around him complicit in his cruelty by convincing us we were protecting him from unreasonable people. That's what abusers do. Lena's voice was hard. They recruit allies by making the victim look like the problem. You weren't the first person Adrian weaponized, and you wouldn't have been the last. How did you survive it? Vanessa looked up, her expression desperate. 3 years of him. How did you not break? Lena thought about that question, about the night she'd cried herself to sleep, the panic attacks in restaurant bathrooms, the constant crushing weight of believing she was fundamentally inadequate. I did break. Lena's voice was quiet. Multiple times. I just kept putting myself back together, and eventually I found people who helped me remember I was worth fighting for. I don't know how to do that. Vanessa's voice was raw. I don't know who I am without Adrian telling me. Then figure it out. Lena's tone was firm, but not unkind. Get therapy. Find your own voice. Stop defining yourself by proximity to powerful men. It's hard and it hurts, and some days you'll want to quit. But it's the only way forward. Vanessa nodded slowly, standing. Thank you for seeing me, for not having security throw me out. Vanessa? Lena stopped her at the door. I hope you find yourself, really, because the woman who helped Adrian destroy me, I don't think that was really you. I think that was who he needed you to be. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. She left without another word. Alone again, Lena turned back to the window. She thought about Adrian in county jail, his career destroyed, his reputation ashes. She thought about Vanessa trying to rebuild an identity constructed around someone else's needs. She thought about all the people Adrian had hurt, all the lives he'd damaged in his relentless pursuit of power he hadn't earned. And she thought about herself, standing in an office with her name on the door, leading innovation she'd created, finally visible in the way she'd always deserved. The anger was still there. Probably always would be. But it was smaller now, taking up less space in her chest. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "My daughter's soccer game is Saturday at 2. Want to come? She's been asking to meet the famous CTO I keep talking about." Lena smiled, something warm unfurling in her chest. Ethan talked about her to his daughter. Thought she was someone worth introducing to the most important person in his life. "I'd love to. Fair warning, I know nothing about soccer." "That's fine, neither does she. But she's enthusiastic about running around and occasionally kicking things, which is the important part." Lena laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuine lightness. When was the last time she'd laughed like that? Before Adrian. Before 3 years of learned smallness and suppressed joy. Saturday came bright and clear. The soccer field was chaos. 7-year-olds in oversized jerseys, parents with folding chairs and thermoses, the beautiful, ordinary mess of people living normal lives. Ethan waved from the sidelines, his daughter beside him. "Lena, this is Sophie." Ethan's voice was warm with pride. "Sophie, this is my friend Lena from work." Sophie looked up at Lena with serious dark eyes identical to her father's. "Dad says you're really smart and really brave, and you helped catch a bad guy." Your dad helped too." Lena crouched down to Sophie's level. "We were a team." "Like superheroes?" Sophie's eyes went wide. "Kind of." Lena smiled. "Except with a lot more paperwork and fewer capes." Sophie giggled, then ran off to join her team. Ethan and Lena settled into folding chairs, watching the game unfold in enthusiastic chaos. "She's wonderful," Lena said quietly. "She's my whole world." Ethan's voice was soft. "Everything I do, every choice I make, it's for her. To build a world where she'll be safe, respected, able to be brilliant without some predator trying to steal her light." "You're doing a good job." Lena's voice was firm. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her." Ethan turned slightly, his expression thoughtful. "And I'm lucky to have found someone who understands what it means to fight for people who deserve better." Something shifted in the air between them, some unspoken acknowledgement that what had started as Crisis Alliance had become something more. Not romance, not yet, but the foundation something real could be built on. Trust, respect, the knowledge that they'd seen each other at their worst and chosen to stay. "Ethan," Lena's voice was tentative. "Thank you for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For helping me fight when I didn't think I could. For..." Her voice cracked. "For reminding me I was worth saving." "You saved yourself." Ethan's voice was gentle. "I just made sure you had the tools, the courage, the refusal to accept Adrian's version of reality. That was all you, Lena. That was always you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Sophie run enthusiastically after the ball, occasionally kicking it in approximately the right direction. Normal. Beautiful. The kind of ordinary moment Lena had forgotten was possible. Her phone buzzed. An email from Richard Voss. "Board meeting next week. Need your input on 5-year technology strategy. The future of this company runs through your innovations. Time to think bigger than what Adrian made us." Lena read it twice, feeling something solidify in her chest. This was real. Her position, her authority, her voice finally heard without distortion or dismissal. She'd fought for this, bled for this, almost died for this. And she'd won. The game ended in enthusiastic chaos, Sophie's team losing spectacularly, but not seeming to mind. She ran over to Ethan, grass-stained and glowing. "Did you see? I almost scored." Sophie bounced with excitement. "I saw. That was amazing." Ethan pulled her into a hug, then glanced at Lena. "Want to grab pizza? Sophie's team tradition after every game." "I'd love that." Lena stood feeling lighter than she had in years. They walked towards a parking lot together, Ethan, Sophie, and Lena, and it felt like family. Not the family she'd been born into, fractured by financial stress and her mother's abandonment, but the family she was building through choice and trust and shared values. The family that said, "You're worth fighting for." Later that night, alone in her apartment, Lena opened her laptop and pulled up the code repository for her next innovation. Something bigger than threat assessment. something that would change how the entire industry thought about security. Her fingers moved over the keyboard with familiar confidence, building something that would bear her name from the beginning this time. No theft, no erasure, just Lena Cross creating brilliance that no one could deny belonged to her. Somewhere across the city, Adrian was probably lying in his county jail cell, processing the destruction of everything he'd built on stolen foundations. Somewhere, Vanessa was maybe starting therapy, beginning the hard work of finding herself. Somewhere, Sarah and Marcus and the others were rebuilding careers Adrian had tried to destroy. And here, in her apartment with code flowing across the screen, Lena was doing what she'd always been meant to do. Creating, innovating, refusing to be small. The woman who'd been invisible had rewritten her entire story. The ending wasn't neat or perfectly just. Adrian's 6 months in jail didn't equal 3 years of abuse. The institutional changes at Voss Industries wouldn't prevent every future predator. But it was something. A crack in the foundation of systems that protected powerful men at the expense of their victims. A precedent that said theft and abuse had consequences. A reminder that the most underestimated person in the room might be the one who changes everything. Lena saved her work, backed it up in 3 separate locations, and stood at her window watching the city lights below. So many people down there, living their lives, fighting their own battles against people who thought they were untouchable. She hoped her story reached them somehow. Hoped they saw that fighting back was possible, that truth could overcome power if you had enough courage and enough evidence. Hoped they knew they weren't alone. Her phone buzzed one last time. A text from Ethan. Sophie wants to know if you can come to her next game. She says you're good luck. Also, I want you to know what you did standing up to Adrian, refusing to disappear, that took more strength than anything I saw in 12 years of military service. You're extraordinary, Lena Cross. Don't ever forget that. Lena read the message 3 times, feeling something crack open in her chest where Adrian's poison had lived for so long. She was extraordinary. Not because she'd survived, because she'd fought back, because she'd refused to accept that power and cruelty were the same thing, because she'd been invisible and she'd made herself unstoppable. And that was a story worth telling.